Bug bounty is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Beginnings of bug bounty are very difficult. That's what many people say about bug bounty, and I agree with them. But there are always outliers, and one of them is Johan Carlsson, who is already making 6-digit income from bug bounty, while only having started 1.5 years ago. And he does it part-time, while also having a wife and 3 children. I have so many questions to ask him, so without further ado, enjoy the episode. Hello, Johan. Thank you so much for joining me in the podcast. If you could introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us how did you get to the point you are in? Start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Johan Carlsson. I go by the handle of UX Car. It's just like an abbreviation of my name with my middle name in between. That's my handle on Twitter and also on HackerOne, where I do most of my bug hunting, which is probably why I'm here. I started bug hunting I think it's 2 years ago now. I started with GitLab, and I've been continuing mainly hunting on GitLab since then. And I've climbed to top 4, aiming for top 3 soon at the GitLab list. So
yeah, that's a huge achievement. So congratulations. I often write in the newsletter that we should look up at people who are most known in the industry, the biggest authorities that everyone knows, but also we should be more focused on people who are just a few steps, a year, 2 years before us. And that's why I look up at you as the example, because the way you climbed the leaderboard on GitLab is absolutely amazing. But before we get to that, what is your background in terms of education and your current job?
Yeah, so my background is a bit like scattered, I guess. Like I've grown up as like a tech kiddie here in Sweden, like a lot of kids in the 80s. In the 80s, like I was born 87. So I had computers pretty early and access to internet pretty early, and I was mainly focusing on playing games and downloading them for free, of course, and and doing all that stuff that we did in the 90s and early 2000. I then also went to like high school, I guess would be the equivalent here in Sweden, like in a tech high school. So I did like programming in Java 1.6 and some Cisco courses and stuff like that in high school. Then I kind of decided to leave computers alone, and I decided to like never touch them again. And I went for like 1 year of military service that we had in Sweden back then, like mandatory. And then I applied for art school, and I did like art studies for about 8 years or something like that. 6, 7, 8 years. And then I got my first kid, and I started to realize that I also had to earn money. And then I like dusted off my old CV from high school and they were really nice to me at like the Stockholm University and gave me a job as like a computer system administrator, is taking care of some computers there. And I did that for like 2 years. And then I decided to go to university again and take a bachelor in like computer science to get like a better foundation. And that's also when
did you get the job like in IT straight after the art studies? Did I get it right?
Yeah, it was like in the like humanist department, like the language center at the Stockholm University. So they kind of liked that I knew something about computers, but I also had like this softer, like we're into like philosophy and those kind of studies. So I kind of like smiled my way in there, I guess. But I've always had like some sort of like I've always been like the family computer guy, like fixing things. But I hadn't like been actively doing like programming or scripting or stuff like that before that. So that was like a lucky chance for them, and it worked out.
And what happened after the university?
Yeah, so like the last year of university, I got to enroll into like, you had to like choose some separate courses that was not like in your real curriculum. And at Stockholm's like KTH, like the Royal Technology University in Stockholm, there's this course called like ethical hacking, which is quite popular, and it seemed super interesting, and so I enrolled into that one. And that whole course is like a big CTF kind of like, there's like this big virtual network where you're supposed to find a lot of flags, and if you find all the flags, you pass the course. And it was like a really amazing experience. I thought like it was super fun. I found all the flags without any hints, and I was really proud. I spent like way too much time on it, and like discarded all other courses I had at the time. And then I with the help from that the teacher there who held that course, he also helped me like getting this like thesis, and he was like my thesis advisory, which I then did. So my thesis project was to do like a security assessment of some part of GitLab. So that was like what we nailed down, mainly focusing on the GraphQL API of GitLab. But so that was when I got introduced to bug bounties, because GitLab had like a bug bounty program, and we knew that like if we find anything, we can apply it or like send it in to them. But I hadn't like ever heard of it before that. So that's about like 2.5 years ago or something like that.
What would be in the thesis if you would not find any vulnerability in GitLab?
Yeah, I think that's what gave me this great like head start into bug bounties, because the thesis, like you could pass the thesis even if you didn't find anything. Like the only thing you had to achieve was to write like some sort of like thorough and thoroughly like motivated security assessment. Like you could prove like you had done most of the steps, like doing like a threat analysis and reading old like previous reports, maybe getting like an understanding of the history of security inside of GitLab. And so it gave me like, I think the course, like writing this thesis is like 2 months or something, or 2.5. So it gave me like, you just have to do this for these months. If you don't find anything, that's fine. You just have to write like a report, and you have to do it like thoroughly. And as it is, or like as it happens with bug bounties, like if you spend 2 months on something, you hopefully will be able to find something, like at least something that is like starting to look like a bug. And yeah, after that, it just kind of rolled on.
The reason I'm asking is because when I was doing my thesis, we with a friend also wanted to do some security research, but like we were advised that in case we should portray the way that we are writing tools, and finding bugs would be a bonus, but it's not necessary. And of course, what we ended up doing is only the tools and nothing else. We tried a bit, but we focused on the part that we had to do. So that's why I envy you for finding the better subject and actually finding cool bugs.
No, we got I was doing this with like a third party, which I cannot really disclose like who it was, but they gave us like 3 options of like this semi open source or like projects to look at that they were interested in, and they had like Mattermost, GitLab, and like YubiKey, and we felt like Mattermost would be like or like our guide told us like Mattermost, that would be like slamming in open doors. I don't think that's true, but he meant like that's not really like, there's not as many people looking at it. And then we looked at like YubiKey, and it seemed like way too advanced for us. So then we just like, it was just like by luck that we ended up like in the middle. Like GitLab felt like a good like middle ground between them.
If there are any students listening to us who are considering a subject for their thesis and they want to do something similar, what would you recommend them to do?
I'm like, definitely go for something open source, and with like, the great thing about GitLab is that everything is open, so you can read all the reports, and you can see all the code changes, and you can see the discussions inside of GitLab, and so that makes it way easier to actually get content for a report or something like that. And like, you can take a lot of like different paths, like doing code assessment or running, and you also have the ability to like set up your own environment and stuff like that. So any sort of like open source things would be easier. And also you're allowed to speak about it like afterwards. So because otherwise it's really hard to write a good report. That was one of the issues that we debated like in the beginning. Like, if we find anything, will we even be allowed to write about this or not?
Yeah, and also it's a funny thing when you find something in open source, but the report is not disclosed yet. So the issue in theory is public, and if you weren't the submitter, you could easily go ahead and reverse the commit with the patch and make a write-up. But considering you are the author, you can't really do it. But we know that GitLab discloses a lot of things that I think they always agree to disclose a report. But
yeah, I mean, if you not disclose it, you can always go to their the issue tracker, and you can find them there. So
is this public as well?
Yeah, they make like everything public after 30 days on their issue tracker. So
okay.
So you can find a lot more there. That's a good tip for anyone.
That much easier. And apart from the course of a CTF, which you mentioned, which sounds really good, what resources did you use to learn about cybersecurity and bug bounty specifically?
A lot of like Portswigger, of course, like at least like reading. I haven't done that many like labs and stuff like that. And other than that, like a lot of just blogs, like Googling for concepts and reading a lot of blogs, and also the hacker one, like Hacktivity feed. And also then since like last year, also Twitter has been like a big source of information for me, like getting hints to like what to look at and what to. So I haven't taken like courses or certifications or read that many like books or anything. I bought some, but I haven't really read them yet. As usual, I bought some courses as well, and I haven't finished them either. So it's hard to find. At least you
have started.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you differentiate the good quality resources from the bad quality resources?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I like when things get like into the deep concepts behind, like reading a write-up that is just like telling you some steps. That could be like a good start, but then I always try to find like some resource that dig deeper into the concept and maybe like explain how it works beneath. And then a lot of like when I try to focus on some new area or something, or have a new, mostly it's driven by like I find something and I need to figure out the way to like exploit it, or like could this be a problem or not? And then I have to like start like building and testing and reading and digging deeper like into that subject. So it's kind of driven by what I find mostly.
And when you're hacking on GitLab, what's the indication for you that it's worth spending more time on a specific functionality?
Yeah, so I guess I had the same experience as most people do when they go to like a new program. Like when I started GitLab the first time, I was like, this seems like a solid application. There's probably nothing here. Like I can click all these buttons, but yeah, sure. Like how would this break? Like I hadn't really like developed the sense of like the hacker mentality yet. Nowadays, when I see like a new functionality, my first question is always like, okay, so like how could this break? And I try to go through like different scenarios, like how would this go wrong? Like what could happen if this goes wrong and stuff like that. But usually I just I click around the GitLab interface, and I also read like old disclosed reports, and also sometimes like issues that come up in their issue tracker. And sometimes there's just like some word or something that is like triggering me to dig like deeper into that like functionality. And a lot of times it's like I see them do something that like I haven't seen that functionality, and then I have to like trace back to like how do I reach that part of the application. And sometimes it's not obvious.
I know the feeling when you see in the code that if you get up to here, you will have the bug. And technically it's not hard, but it's hard to actually know how to go in this application and actually trigger this part of the code. Some people test by choosing one vulnerability class and then going through all the target with a single vulnerability. Some look at the source code, find interesting things, and then try to find out how can they get to this thing. Other people test functionality by functionality. Obviously, it's a mix for everyone, but how do you test vulnerabilities?
So in GitLab, I've had the most success with like different kinds of injection, like front-end injection attacks, kind of. So like everything from like HTML injections and cross-site scripting and some like client-side path traversals and stuff like that. But and also like information disclosures. But so my workflow is kind of like, if I find something that's like feel a bit weird, I start like digging into that one and like starting to research about that subject. And then I try to see if there are like other places in the code base where they have made like maybe the same mistake or something like that. But it's mostly like driven from the functionality that I find. Like, could this be like an injection, or could this be as like, if I log in as like a user with a different privilege, maybe I could access this page or whatever. And I have this goal of like diversifying somewhat, like trying to find like new attack vectors. I don't know if I will manage to do it on GitLab. I've been lucky to diversify a bit on other programs where I've been like either like invited to private programs and some other. I've also looked a bit at browsers. That's kind of my new goal, looking at Chrome and Firefox. It's a really fun challenge. But so they're kind of like what type of attack you can look for different, like it differs depending on the target, I guess.
And you mentioned that sometimes you will find a functionality or something that you want to see if it's vulnerable in other places. When you want to look for it, do you first do some code search to find the same mistake in other places of the code, or do you think about functionalities, or how would you do this?
So in GitLab, I will find something that works weird, and then I go to try to find this area in the source code to see like. That's also great with this, like white box or gray box testing, like white box in this case, that you don't have to like guess what kind of payloads you can enter there. You can just go to the source code. And so maybe I find like, okay, I can enter something like usually I just enter like this H1 tag, like H1 ASD closing tag to just see if like it pops some, or if I can see that my text is actually like rendered as HTML. But then in GitLab, there's a lot of places where this is allowed, like markdown fields and whatever. So then I just go to the source code and see like, okay, is this markdown or is this something else? And then you can quite quickly see like what it is. And then if I realize like, okay, this is an issue, I try to escalate it. And when I have my report and I have my escalation and I've sent it in, I try to like grep in the source code for similar places where they've used maybe the same functionality or the same function or something like that.
What IDE are you using to browse the code?
So, yeah, I saw someone like ask something about that as well on the Twitter, and I should have been better with this from the start. I've been like a late bloomer in the setting up like a proper environment. So I've actually been browsing the code through the GitLab web page, which is horrible because you cannot like click on a function to find it. You have to like search for it manually, and you have to load like a new page for every directory you want to get into and stuff like that. And then
GitHub improved with this lately. On GitHub, you can already
have, exactly, and you can
not only the browser-based Visual Studio Code, but also the normal browsing of the code is also much easier now.
Oh yeah, but of course I should have just downloaded it way earlier than I did. Now I have it locally, and it's way quicker to browse around. I use VS Code for that. I have downloaded RubyMine, which is like the big IDE for Ruby, but I don't really know any Ruby, so I will try to use it and see if I can get any success with it. I know that like the some other people are using that with great success to like debug the code.
Yeah, I'm also using VS Code. But I feel it's great for Golang, it's great for Node.js, but for Ruby, I a few times already I was jumping to RubyMine because I know it's better. VS Code doesn't always do the jumps to function properly. But I always come back to VS Code because I'm just more familiar with it, and I go through the struggles. But when you're testing GitLab, do you have a local instance?
Yeah, or I do both, kind of depending on what I need to test. Like some functionality is only available in their like cloud environment or like on the gitlab.com page, and some functionality is only available in your like local environment. So I do a bit of both. It's also sometimes easier to test locally because you don't have to care about like CSP blocking your XSSs and stuff like that. And then you try to like get it to work on the real page as well. Yeah, on GitLab's program, if you submit like 3 valid reports, they will give you like an ultimate trial license or like that you can use locally for a year. So that will also make it possible for you to take. So that's like the third option, having like an ultimate license locally. So then you get access to like even more functionality. And also if you want to test like DOS, like denial of service things, you have to do it on your own machine. You cannot do it on the GitLab servers.
Is it a lot of effort to set it up and maintain?
No, it's really easy to just set up an instance. You just copy like a Docker script. They have this called like Omnibus, like a Docker image. You just start and everything is running inside of there, like all the whatever is needed, like background processes and stuff. So like databases and everything. And then you can just like update it and keep the data locally. And so that's fairly simple. I feel like it's a bit trickier to set up like other, like if you're gonna start like your own GitLab runners and stuff like that and connect them, that's the workers for the CI/CD pipelines and stuff like that. If you want to like test those kind of features, it can be a bit more tricky. That's also like that's why people don't test those areas as much, I guess. Like when it starts to get like a lot of build up before you can actually like test a really small feature. I've done a lot of that lately, like setting up this really complicated stuff.
I think that it is one of the easiest ways to differentiate from other hackers, to just spend more time on setting up and reading the docs.
Yeah, but it's also like a mess to send in the reports afterwards, because you have to tell like the triager to do all these steps. It can be really, it can be a pain.
I feel like with the open source programs, it's sometimes hard to get past the triage, because with developers, you just show the code and you're speaking on the same wavelengths because you both know the code base. But the triager, which is responsible for many programs, just doesn't have the knowledge that both you have and the developers have, and it's sometimes a bit tricky to get through that phase. But once you get, you can speak the same language with developers.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned client-side path traversal. Do you have any disclosed report with this? Because I also seen one report with this bug.
Yeah, I actually have one that I realized that I haven't requested a disclosure for it, but it is public in the issue tracker. So I can try to link that one. I will also try to make it or ask them to disclose it now. It's kind of or I've had some like similar bugs that I have had a hard time to like name properly. Like people are trying to name these things in different ways, but it's this bug where I could like do a path traversal and make some of the buttons in the UI interface, like if you click them, it will make like a put request to the API, and you can, depending on who clicks it, you can do different things like get yourself like to become an admin if there's an admin clicking the button and stuff like that.
Apart from setting up things that other people don't want to set, what do you think you do that differentiates you from other hackers? Because definitely before you started hacking on GitLab, both me and probably dozens of other hunters would say that no way there is a way to jump up GitLab's leaderboard quickly, but you just showed us you can. So what's the secret? What do you do differently?
I think that I focus like quite heavily on, even if I report some like a lot of these UI issues as well, like my main focus is to like understand the application and the business logic part of it. So a lot of the bugs I find seem even to me like quite simple, like this privilege bypasses where you can like, if I am, for example, they have this concept of an external user. Those were some of the first bugs I found, like during when I did the thesis. I tested like all this, trying to get my user into different states. So like if it's an external user, you're only supposed to see like projects and groups that you are a member of. You're not able to see like other like internal or like publicly internal projects. And then I always so I have that in the back of my mind all the time when I see a new functionality, like, okay, so who can use this? Like, what happens if I do this as this kind of user or this kind of user or this kind of user? So I started to like really trying to build up an understanding of like how the business logic of GitLab was working. I think that have helped me a lot because it also makes me focus less on like the technical parts. I guess there's like a lot of like super talented hackers with all this like knowledge about doing like technical attacks that have tested GitLab, but then you can just find a way to like leak some data because you're a user in this different setting of the application. And
so in this context, by understanding the business logic, do you mean understanding what permission level, what it means in a real life, what it means in a real company? And if yes, how do you keep track of it? How do you note these things?
Yeah, so that's what I mean, like having an understanding of like what is important for GitLab and what is important for like the GitLab customers. Like why there has been some reports that I made that has been like, so this is like this information have been like, it's been in the UI for a long time. And I know that it shouldn't probably be there because that's how like my understanding of it. And then I report it and they say like, yeah, you're right. Like this shouldn't be here. So they like accept it like an information disclosure thing. So what was the second part?
How do you note it?
Oh yeah, taking notes. Yeah, that's one of my other like on the to-do list. I have no notes at all, essentially. I promised myself to start taking notes like a couple of times, but I haven't done it. And it's horrible. Like I have to rediscover things a lot of times, like and search for it again and again. And I've started taking some notes of like payloads that I know work in different situations. Just so I don't have to like find them again the next time so I wouldn't recommend that at all. It's a horrible system, but
but it works. Apparently, it works. Coming back to your thesis, I thought that it possibly could have helped you because myself, when I write some notes, and I know that I will publish them later for other people. I'm more meticulous doing this, and I'm thinking to myself, if other people read this, will they think about the scenario that I want, and I will look like a fool, and I then come up with new things to test. Do you think when you're doing your thesis, did you even note like why is a part not vulnerable, or was it also no notes policy?
Yeah, I should have taken more notes at that time as well, I guess. And I've been trying to force myself to do a bit more writing and like taking notes and trying to like explain stuff for myself as well. And as you say, like that's also a way that I often find bugs. Like I see someone like GitLab is like releasing these like fixed issues once a month. And a lot of times I can like look at someone else's report, and by like understanding like what they have done, I can immediately start like thinking of other like areas that they have missed that are like really similar. And that's when my like the understanding of the whole like application comes into play, because maybe I know something about this different part of the application or this other like permission level that will also cause a problem. So I try to do that with my own reports, usually by like it usually takes a month or two to have them like through the whole like triage process, and usually I go back to the reports and like revisit them and try to see if I missed something and like dig deeper into them.
And when you report a bug, do you like consider the job done and you're just waiting for the payout, or are you tempted to come back to it, maybe escalate an impact, find something else?
That's it's interesting. I've been like meaning to put my opinions on that like out somewhere on Twitter or anywhere else, but I've like stopped myself a lot of times. I've seen a lot of tweets and discussions about like fire and forget, or like report and forget. I don't know what they say, but like that you should just report and move on.
Yeah.
And I think that might be like a good advice if you're like one of those people who are like having tons of findings and like working on multiple programs and like do this for a living or whatever. But for me, it's like when I learn the most and when I find the most like news things is when I've had like one like opening, like something that like I found this small bug, then I can spend like a lot of time trying to like escalate it, understand it, see if there are like other related things. So usually I come back to my reports like a lot of times, not just to look like, okay, let's see if the triager has answered me, but I come back and like add information, sometimes to the extent so like it becomes like a bit too much, I guess, like bloated. And sometimes they ask me to like, yeah, you should just write a new report for this. So I've started to divide them up a bit. But so I would say for like beginners, definitely not just like report and move on, because you have the opportunity to like really dig deep into a subject now when you have like this entry point into the application.
I agree with this. And GitLab is obviously huge. After spending about 1.5 years, 2 years on it now, how big part of it do you think you are familiar with? And are you aware of all the different components that GitHub is composed of?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not. I'm like familiar with like the regular user experience and the UI parts, and like some parts of the internal like business logic layer. But there's a lot of parts in GitLab that is also like they have their separate scope in their bug bounty program, like looking at their like backend services, which would be probably you would need like do even more like code research and maybe like running these local systems and test them. But I'm pretty sure that they would accept bugs in those areas as well. And I've seen like the sketches and diagrams on their like documentations from these systems, but I haven't really looked into them. And there's also like some parts that still scare me, like setting up like Terraform clusters and stuff like that. That's also on my to-do list. So if someone beats me to it, feel free.
Yeah, that's what we've talked about. If you invest more time into doing the scary setup things,
yeah.
which I'm also very scary of, then it's a good way to differentiate.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned at least one thing, but what do you think you waste time on when hacking?
Yeah, so I definitely waste time on just like clicking on the same functionality like again and again. When I don't feel like inspired, maybe I just log in and I'm like, okay, let's go to the project page again. Like maybe I missed something and I just click on everything. And I mean, I shouldn't do that. There's like better ways to like more structural ways to go through the application. And also the like not taking notes, as I said, like that. I would save a lot of time by like having this more structured way. But I also feel like the wasting time is really hard to say that like that's what I'm doing, because all of a sudden I will find something. So it's kind of part of the process to just like linger around and just be present in it, I guess. And like all of a sudden you see something and you make a finding.
Do you think having a creative background helps you in any way in coming up with attack scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, it could, I guess. I like thinking, like taking a concept and like turning it around and upside down and like inside out and trying to really like dig into that goes for everything. It doesn't really have to be like bug bounty related, or like if I work and I do find like I'm encountering some kind of like tech that I haven't used before, I usually I want to like understand how it works, and I spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos, getting like into the deep weeds of that subject, whatever it is. So, and that definitely helps, because then you will start to see like the potential vulnerable points, I guess.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is when I started doing creative things like scripting a video or trying to come up with something, so a creative process in general, I see how much wasting time actually is the best way to come up with something good. And before, I would think about people with creative jobs, like, I don't know, writers, about people who just walk around the home all day, very lazy, and having a very hard job to come up with an interesting story. And it switched my perspective that often, as I've said, wasting time again on the same things is actually very good for creativity.
Yeah. And then I think that you can like be smart about it and like try to force, like, sometimes you have to spend those like hours like banging your head against the wall, and then when you take a break you will like finally understand something. So you need to take those hours. You cannot only take breaks, but then sometimes you take like way too many hours, I guess. So you have to like try to find a balance of like, okay, I should stop now, and then maybe I could figure something out. I've had some of those like the classic like shower moments when I've found bugs like while taking a shower, because it finally like clicks for me, like how is something.
Is it
working.
disclosed? Can you talk about what idea was that?
Yeah, like one of my like first findings was like that. I kind of touched on it, like it was with these like external users. Like I found this functionality where you can create like access tokens in your project, so like project level access tokens. And I was digging into that functionality, and it seemed like when you created an access token, it created a user, like a temporary, like a bot user. So I've been digging into that, and I also had been digging into this external user thing. And then when I took a shower, I just realized that, well, if I create a token with my external user, I will get access to this like bot user, which is not external. And I was really like excited, and it was also very late. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't, so I had to get up and test it out, and it worked. So that's like the amazing feeling of like something working like as you expected it to.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was great.
I've had this same experience with, I think, my first bug on Stripe, which I found before recording the first episode of the podcast. I just came up with some idea when I was not hacking, but I didn't jump to the computer because I thought it won't work. And I was preparing for the interview with David for the first episode, as I've mentioned. And while I had Burp open, I don't remember why, but I was preparing for the podcast with Burp open. So I figured out I will just give my idea a try, and all of a sudden it worked. So I remembered. Oh no, it probably was before the second episode. Never mind that.
It's a great feeling, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think I should spend more time doing nothing. Like whenever I'm bored or whenever I'm doing anything, I have headphones in my ears, either listening to a podcast, audiobook, whatever. And I think I would benefit from spending more time doing nothing.
Yeah, I definitely have that experience as well. Like sometimes I like fill up my schedule way too much, so I don't have any time for those like times for just thinking. But my family is really good at like forcing me out of thinking only about one subject.
Yeah, exactly what I want to get into. You have a full-time job of a developer. You have 3 kids. How do you find time for hunting?
Yeah, so that's of course a good question. I've been cutting out of like everything else except for like family and job, I guess. Like I don't play games anymore or stuff like that, like I used to do a couple of years ago. So I usually spend like 1 or 2 hours almost each, at least weekday, at like when my kids have gone to bed. I do something like bug bounty related, like reading blogs or testing something or something like that. But usually and sometimes I also get like a bit like some more time on my hands, like maybe my family goes away for a day or two or something, I can get like a couple of more hours. But I don't have enough time to like dig super deep. So it's more like, that's also why I focus mainly on like one program and sticking to that, because when I have like only 2 hours, it's way easier to just get into something that I'm familiar with and not just trying to get into this like whole new application of. But it's a tricky balance, I guess. I mean, I have 3 kids to take care of, and they're quite intense sometimes.
What age are they?
They're 2 and 5 and 6 now.
Yeah, so that's probably very time consuming.
Yeah, they are. But I've found some bugs like while like scrolling the phone, laying on the floor, like waiting for them to fall asleep and stuff like that. So maybe it also like forces me to look in different areas, I guess.
Yeah, maybe the time of not doing anything that's consuming the mind too much, which also helps the creative process.
Yeah.
So do you work full time actually?
Yeah, I do. I work as at the moment like a front-end developer, I would say. At this Swedish, it's actually now I work at like a security-related company called Recorded Future. They do like threat intelligence for other companies. I guess that's the main focus. But I'm a front-end developer, so I build like React, the React application. So I do that full time. Yeah.
Do you think about either going full time with Bug Bounty or maybe reducing your time spent in, let's say, making your job part-time to have more room for Bug Bounty?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've thought about it when I have had these like weeks when it's been very successful. But I also have, so I get, GitLab pays quite well for bugs. So that's why I sometimes have like a high, like I get a lot of like bounties for a month. But there's usually like a long period in between finding them. And every time I don't find anything, I feel like, I could never do this like full time. Yeah, I mean, I will, at the moment, I'm really happy to like building stuff at work and just doing this like as a hobby and not having something like destroying it, like making it my career. I think it's really fun. Last year, I kind of was focused on like trying to prove to myself that I could do it. Like I could consistently find issues and I could like get paid for it. I was between jobs like during the summer. So that was when I had like most time doing it. And then during the fall, when I entered my new role, I haven't had as much time to focusing on it. So right now I've kind of shifted my focus to try to like be a bit more like structured and maybe do some other parts, like doing more like maybe do a write-up or two or stuff like that. Like I don't feel so stressed about finding a lot of bugs so far like this year because I kind of proved it to myself last year that it's possible. So now I know that at least. So let's see what the future brings.
I understand. I also saw you started writing a blog and a write-up of an XSS challenge.
Yeah. So I have my second write-up coming on Monday, I think. So it's fun. It's
where can people find it if we're talking about it already?
I have trying to start a webpage, uxcar.com. So it's like blog.uxcar.com. So you can find it there. Hopefully I will add some more like write-ups and stuff that is related to my own work. I kind of used these like integrity challenges just to force myself to try to write something. And it helped. Like I started the blog, like set up this Jekyll page and all that. So I'm happy about it.
And also, you mentioned a long period of not finding a bug. One question is, what's your definition of long period of not finding the bug? Because it differs very much between different hunters. And the second question is, what do you do then?
So I have tried to have like at least one resolved report each month, but that's like a not very accurate measurement, because it's sometimes your reports, they are like you report it 1 month and it gets like resolved way later. So, but like between findings, I would say like a month is a long period for me, or it was like that at least last year. I could usually find something each month in like some program, maybe not GitLab, but like in some other, like if you quote like easier target.
And what do you do then?
And if I get into that like kind of dry period, I just keep on going, I think. Just keep on like reading, and in GitLab, the easiest thing to do is just wait for the next release, which is like the 22nd each month. And then you get some like new scope to look at. But yeah, I mean, so now I think I have like over 50 resolved reports on the HackerOne. And so before like the first like 30, before that I was really like, after each resolved report, I still felt like this is just luck. Like I cannot do this. Like it has nothing to do with like me. I've just been lucky. So like I will never find a bug again. Now I kind of feel confident. Like if I look at something like long enough, I would probably be able to find something. So that helps like with your mental health, I guess.
Yeah. I feel exactly the same. That in the beginning you just don't believe it can be this way, but after more time you just get the confidence, and it gives you a calm look at the periods of not finding bugs.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're looking,
No, sometimes I get the idea to like start looking at some new program as well. Like I get some invite or something, or I find something interesting, and then I kind of sometimes feel again like, this is not like, I'm not good at this. Like there's nothing here to find for me. So then I have to like remind myself like, okay, but it will take some time. Like you have to really get into this program to find something, or be lucky, or like find something that I'm good at. So usually I find like XSS stuff on like these random programs, because I'm fairly good at like the whole concept and JavaScript, and so.
Yeah, how do you choose other programs? Because for our viewers, I think if we look at your public HackerOne profile, there is only GitLab.
Yeah.
But I also see some private programs which I'm also accepted, and I see that you are also having a reasonable number of submissions there. So how do you choose those programs? What are you looking for when choosing a program?
I usually look at just like, not that they have like high bounties in particular. I usually look at like the medium level, like if that is at least like 500 or something. So I know that, because that's what I usually find. Sometimes I try to escalate it to high, and if I'm lucky, one critical a year. But so I look at that, and I also try to look at like what kind of company is this, but also like some of the private invites I've jumped on are the ones that I see like this is a real, like it's a fresh target. So then I enter to be part of this like gold rush in the beginning. So I've done that like once or twice. And it's a really like a frustrating experience, I think, but it's also fun because you find a lot of bugs, but like there's a lot of duplicates, and you have to write really shitty shitty reports because you like have to send them really quick.
Yeah, exactly what I wanted to I thought that if you're used to hacking on GitLab with a relatively low amount of bugs, big payouts, and detailed reports, then taking part in a new program is probably not nice.
Yeah, it's really different. I mean, when I find something on GitLab, sometimes I don't like. It can take some days before I report it. Maybe I don't have time to sit at the computer. Like it's a weekend and I have to go with my family somewhere. But I'm never like stressed that someone else will report it. Like either they would have reported before or they would find it like some days after. Like I have never had like an issue that I reported something and it was just like hours or 1 or 2 days in between on GitLab at least. So, but on these like gold rush programs, I've had those like 2 minutes, and you can see like the ID is like you're a duplicate of the report that was reported previously.
And probably a 1 or 2 hunters between you two.
Yeah, exactly. So,
do you have a lot of duplicates and NAs and stuff like this?
On like GitLab is very friendly. I think it's really hard to get like an NA at the program. They give like informational. So I have some informational usually because we kind of disagree on what is the danger, or like they know about it and it's like they've already like they planned it like it's a feature, not a bug kind of stuff. And I've had a fair 10 duplicates or something like that. But not very many, but it does happen. But it's happened a lot more on like other programs, like these the smaller ones. Like they are also usually slower to fix issues, so it's a higher chance for it to be a duplicate.
How do you deal with reports where they are marked as informational, where you still, even after their argument, you still disagree with this?
I try to. I've done that like a lot of times. Sometimes I've succeeded to have them accept it. It's usually a really long process. Like I don't know how the system on HackerOne works when you send something on like an already closed report. It feels like it can take months to get an answer. Now, sometimes I've so I usually like ask in and try to get someone to know. I've used this feature on HackerOne like 1 or 2 times, this moderation thing. I've probably used it the wrong way. And one time I succeeded and one time nothing happened. So, but it's...
I would say 50% success rate is not that bad.
No, it's okay. But I mean, it's really tough when like you report a cross-site scripting, for example. I kind of knew, like I reported one that was a duplicate 2 months ago to GitLab, and I know that the issue is worth like $12,000 or something like that. They pay now for like a CSP bypass XSS. I kind of felt like, okay, this will be a duplicate because it was very inspired by another report. And he did manage to see like the bypass before me and then send it in. So, but the weight there could be frustrating. Yeah,
it must hurt. I haven't had this case yet, but I imagine it must hurt. If a beginner, let's say, with a similar background to you, which is computer science university and no professional experience, would tell to you asking how to start bug bounty, what would you recommend them to do?
I would, I would probably be boring and say like go to Portswigger and like do the labs and stuff like that. But I haven't really done that myself, so I don't know if it's good advice. I would say like find something that interests you. Like you have to like feel a connection with the program, and you have to feel a connection with the bug types you're hunting for. Otherwise, it will become really boring really fast. Like you will not be able to like stick through it. like I spend a lot of time like trying to understand how HTML and XSS stuff work, because I think it's really fun. Yes, it's like a puzzle game, and you have to have that, like you have to feel happy about doing it. Otherwise, it will just become way too boring, I think.
Is this your favorite bug class, the XSS?
It's not. I don't know if it is. Like it's not a really good one to have like your favorite, because it's a lot of programs just put it as a medium, and you have to spend like a lot of time trying to escalate it and stuff. I think IDORs are like better. You just give them like, here's the endpoint, it leak all the data, and you're done.
Yeah.
But I like it because it has this like puzzle aspect to it, and it also gives you like a white box testing feeling, even on like black box environments, because you can always look at the source code and like try to figure out like how you would bypass something, and trying to find like, I mean, I don't like it in a way to just like paste a payload and see if it pops up. I like when you have to like dig into the HTML and see if you can find like a gadget somewhere and use it in some interesting way. And I've had a lot of success on like older programs, like private ones, but I can see that a lot of people have been there. And then I just open their kind of like, they have some sort of like HTML builder included. And I've found like a lot of XSSs in them, because it's really fun to like try to bypass these filters they have in place. And I guess most people just put in some payloads and moved on when it didn't work.
When you're hacking and you see that, let's say you're in GitLab and you find the functionality, and you get to a point where you will think, if you find a vulnerability here, it's a bug in the library and not in GitLab's code. In this situation, do you like assume the library is secure, or you don't want to test the library, or you dig deep and check out the source code of the library?
I definitely would check out the source code of the library. I mean, GitLab is good in that regard as well. Like they will pay you for third-party bugs if you find them, like when hunting on their program. But I would definitely try to. So that's how I found I have like one bug that is resolved in the Firefox. It was this like not super serious, like you could execute JavaScript in like a sandbox iframe sort of, but you had to like really mess up your code for it to happen, but they still accepted it. And because I found it on a program where they had done this, so I could execute like my payload. It fired on Firefox, but not on any other browser. So their code, like it was not very well written, but I mean, they used it in a way that should be safe. So I reported it to Mozilla, and I got like a way higher bounty for them. Like I got 2,000 from Mozilla for it, and I got like $200 or something from the company where I found it, because I didn't have to tell them like the browser is gonna fix this, because I thought the code was pretty. they needed to fix it anyway, I guess. So
yeah. Is this what you're looking forward in 2023, into more browser hacking?
Yeah, definitely. It has some of the same feeling as with GitLab. I feel like everything is open source. You can read all the disclosed bugs in like Chrome and stuff like that. And you can also like, you just sit in your browser and build stuff, like trying to use the web APIs and so that's how I'm gonna approach this browser testing. I'm not gonna go in and finding like buffer overflow things, which people seem to find or like use after free seems to be like big issues in Chrome. So I'm not gonna get that technical.
So what bugs will you look into, and what are the skills required for this?
I mean, the browsers are using, like they are implementing web APIs. So they are essentially just like applications, just like GitLab. And sometimes they get things wrong. I mean, you can read the specification and you can try it out, and you can see if they follow the specification. And I've done a lot of like testing with these iframes, like And it's really fun because you can just do it in your own like small web page. You create an iframe and you just throw stuff at it and see if it breaks in some way. Like, and there's tons of APIs in the web framework, and it's you can test it just like any other application. So that's what I'm planning to do. And I've found, as I said, like I have one bug in Chrome that is fixed, but it will be disclosed in like 2 weeks or something, I think. And I will try to write a write-up for it, hopefully. And I have another one in Firefox, which is like pending. So it's not, and those are just like API-ish related bugs in this like web, in their, the web implementations.
So my last question, what's the reason to disclose your findings? In theory, you are just making yourself a competition.
Yeah.
So what's the reason for publishing, for writing blog posts, disclosing findings, and coming to us on podcast as well?
Yeah, I know. So my wife asks me this as well. Like, why do you do this? Like, aren't you just sharing your secrets and losing out on it? But I don't know. I feel it's partly because I feel like obligated to give back. Like I've learned everything I know from other people who have shared their knowledge. So I feel like it's nice to do the same. But I also feel like that's like when I get tired of like hunting for bugs, like in a technical perspective, it's really nice to have like this. You start building up something like which is also outside of the bug hunting. So I get contacted by people sometime. They like ask me like, I found this. Maybe we could try something together. And then I mean, there's like this. Things happen when you start like putting yourself out there, I guess. I've gotten like job offers and stuff like that as well. So that's mainly, I want to share it, and I also want to make myself like present in the community, I guess.
Okay, I understand. Thank you so much for joining me in this interview. I think there are tons of value for our viewers. If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter, Johan. I'm also at Mastodon, which is the new place to be, I guess. So I'm Johan there as well, like InfoSec Exchange. And then I have my new blog, and I also have LinkedIn and GitLab and GitHub and everything. I have the same handle. So I guess you can search for me if you want to find me. But if you want to reach out, do it on Twitter. It's easiest, like DM.
Perfect. It's JOAXCAR for those that are listening.
Yeah.
And once again, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the whole episode. If you enjoyed it, leave a like on YouTube or a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm also open to any feedback you have, and suggest me future guests that you would like me to interview. For now, thank you for listening, and goodbye.